Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alec Reed. This is my channel Alec Reads, and today we are reading A Dream. It's a drarry fanfiction on Wattpad. Before I jump in, I did want to say sorry for taking such a long break without letting you know what was going on. Obviously, that's never okay to do, but there was a lot of things in my own life that I just kind of needed to take care of, especially mental health stuff. I did make a post over on Instagram where I let everyone know that I will not be doing YouTube for a bit, but I definitely should have made a video saying that I couldn't. But I'm definitely doing a lot better now. If you guys have any questions, you can always go ask them on Instagram. It's AlecReads123, and ask any questions you want. I'm very open about my mental health just because it's a good thing to talk about. It's something that's necessary to speak on. So definitely ask any questions you have. Like, subscribe, comment down below, whether it's just saying hello or whether it's giving recommendations. I respond to all comments, no matter what they are, even if it's just, I like your content. I will usually thank you for just watching my content and being who you are and saying hello. But we're gonna jump right in, so I hope you enjoy. A Dream, Chapter 7. The great hall was almost completely silent, with only the sounds of whispers, page turns, and footsteps. Pages were turned every minute, and footsteps of teachers or students sounded on the stone floor, the small whispers from a few groups of students. Harry looked down at his spotless parchment. His quill still laid in the ink-pot, untouched. He frowned as he compared his to Draco's, which had flawlessly written paragraphs down to the end. Currently he was studying with Draco, because the project was due tomorrow, and Draco had already written a lot, but he hadn't wrote anything, and they had to do a final duel tonight. Harry sighed quietly, but it seemed to have gained the attention of the blonde. The boy huffed and rested his head on his hand. Draco, not wanting to fail, slid his paper over to Harry before grabbing a book and reading it. He saw Harry smile at him slightly out of the corner of his eye, and Draco blushed, almost. Harry began using some of the ideas off his paper, trying to not copy it word for word. He thought Draco's handwriting was so beautiful. It was elegant and suited him perfectly. Harry had observed the way he wrote too much. How his hand glided delicately with the quill, how his slim fingers did not touch the paper at all, thankfully not smudging the words. What those hands could do, Harry thought. He blushed, deep crimson. Harry thought his own handwriting was scruffy and messy, a lot like himself. He sighed quietly. Draco looked over to Harry, checking how much he had wrote. Draco smirked at a few misspellings. He reached over and pointed to werewolf, the second E missing. Harry looked up from the paper to him and saw how close their faces were. Draco realized this too, and his facade cracked slightly as the smirk dropped and his eyes softened. Harry blushed slightly at the proximity. Now what? Harry thought, as the two boys still stared into each other's eyes. Harry was dealing with the beauty of Draco's eyes suddenly. A mix of gray and blue looked like a rainy day. The kind of days where you can snuggle up in comfy clothes and blankets watching films all day. Those cozy days you'd spend with friends or your significant other. Draco seemed to snap out of his thoughts, because he had quietly cleared his throat and turned back to his book. Harry's small smile faltered before he continued writing. Soon he had finished the essay, so he and Draco could begin working on the duel. To put it simply, all they had to do was explain how to defend yourself against a werewolf, and how to heal a bite quickly before you become one. Draco had the part of the essay about healing, mainly because he knew most about that stuff. And Harry tried to write the actual defense part, but it obviously didn't go well. Draco ended up writing the first few sentences, and that's why Harry copied from him. The two boys entered to abandoned potions classroom, requested by Harry from McGonagall. Draco slipped off his robe and dropped the books and essay. Harry followed suit in pulling off his robe. Right. What was the first thing you do before you see a werewolf? Draco quizzed Harry quickly, not wanting to debate on who's going first. Establish dominance, he answered uncertainly. Draco sent a small stinging hex towards Harry, hitting him in the upper calf. Harry hissed as the blonde scoffed before rolling up his sleeves. This got Harry's attention. Draco's pale arms, one decorated an evil, dreadful, dark mark of the enemy, both covered in outstanding veins. Harry gulped. That's the last thing you want to do. Try again, Potter. Draco huffed. Oh, cast a protection spell or make no sudden movements, Harry replied, this time with more confidence. Correct. Harry smiled. Now he got to ask Draco. What must you do before the werewolf's poison enters your bloodstream? Try to remove its fangs or knock its teeth out. Draco was confident. He was right, which he was. Harry sighed. Correct. They went back and forth for an hour, Harry getting hexed almost every turn. Harry whined. My legs hurt. He rubbed his aching thighs. He put his wand in his bag before turning back to Draco. Here, Draco said, holding out a small square of chocolate. Harry's eyes glanced down between Draco and the food. He shook his head when Draco's face flushed into a pale, sunken face. He sucked in a breath. Potter? Harry's mind flashed between the pictures of a smiling Remus and a dead one. The living grin of a sweet man turned into a lifeless body. Harry's breathing quickened in panic. He felt suffocated. He looked around frantically. His eyes found Draco first, not registering who it was. Harry wrapped his arms around Draco's neck. He buried his face into the sweet-smelling blonde's neck as few tears slipped out of his emerald eyes. He mumbled a few curse words as he released. He was going into a panic attack. Harry's hands trembled as he whispered, This is pathetic. You're pathetic. Make it stop, please. You're the reason he's dead. You're the reason they're all dead, Harry. You worthless piece of space. Waste of space. Please, stop. Draco sat frozen, wrapped in Harry's arms as the boy cried and gripped him for dear life. Hesitantly, Draco wrapped his own arms around Harry's arms, hesitantly rubbing soft with his thumbs and swaying them back and forth. After a few minutes, Harry had finally calmed down. The dark-haired boy pulled away, face red with embarrassment. I'm sorry, he whispered, grabbing his potions with haste and sprinting out of the classroom. Potter! He heard the door slam behind him before it opened again. Harry roughly wiped his tear-stained cheeks with the palms of his hands. But Harry! Harry stopped in his tracks. Did he just... Harry turned suddenly to see Draco running towards him. The blonde stopped right in front of him. You called me Harry. He was shocked. As he was concerned, they hated, no, despised each other. I just wanted to know if you're all right. I can get them too sometimes. Hugging someone also helps me too. It's grounding, Draco said sheepishly. After a few awkward seconds, Draco held out his hand, offering a handshake. Truce? Harry looked at his hand, then back to Draco, smiling. He shook Draco's hand. The blonde smirked and walked away from Harry. The black-haired boy blushed before walking back to his dorm. Draco turned away from the boy and began walking back to the room to collect his things. He and Harry were sort of friends now. Maybe he didn't hate Harry as much as he thought. Just because I'm his acquaintance doesn't mean I'll ever be nice to Weasel. He sneered at just the thought of it. He snatched his bag from the floor and a small notepad next to his essay. He picked it up, examining it carefully. He opened it to see a beautifully accurate drawing of a flower, specifically a lily. Draco stared in amazement. He turned to the next page and saw a rough sketch of a stag. Still rough, but beautiful. He flipped through a few more until he saw one of himself, smiling. It was an amazingly accurate drawing. His hair and facial features, the uniform, it looked like a still picture in black and white. Draco was flattered someone would draw him. This could be Harry's. Draco wondered. Confusion crossed his face. Nothing was in here before us. But why exactly would he draw me, of all people? Chapter 8. Draco, darling. It was 10 p.m. at night, just after Harry and Draco's study session and panic attack, when Draco was rudely interrupted by his best friend Pansy. He was in the middle of dressing when she burst into his private room. "What now?" he groaned, running his hand through his damp hair as he had just taken a shower. "Dre, you're really trying to make me straight, aren't you?" Pansy smirked, dragging her eyes down his toned torso. He rolled his eyes playfully before laughing sarcastically. He quickly pulled a hoodie on and sat on his bed. Pansy scoffed in return and flopped on his bed. "So I was thinking." She paused. "We need to throw a party." Draco smiled. "That's not a bad idea, Pans. And, of course, you only thought of the best ones." Cockily, she smiled and said, "Thank you, dear sir. Truly, it's a good idea. I could get Theo to sneak in fire whiskey and some spiked butterbeer." "Are we inviting the other houses?" he asked curiously. "Oh, I don't know. I bet you just really want to see Potter dressed up." She smirked, and Draco hit her with his pillow, laughing. "Hey, you dick! It's not like you don't have a massive crush on Ranger." He huffed back, slightly blushing. "I do not!" she shouted, blush peeking through her small amount of makeup. "I think we should," Draco said quietly. "Plus, me and Potter have become a sort of friends." "No way!" she smiled. We shook hands. That was it. "Dragon, you flirt." She laughed, over-exaggerating. "Pansy, we shook hands, not fucking kissed. But I bet you really wanted to." "Pansy!" Harry sighed as he tiredly limped over to his bed. He rubbed his eyes and flopped back onto the soft mattress, still dressed in his uniform. He was still slightly shaken due to the attack, but he was mostly just tired. "You okay, Harry?" Dean asked, sitting gently on the side of his own bed. He scratched the top of his head before turning back to Harry. "How did you... that you?" Harry sat up and turned to the boy, blushing slightly from embarrassment. Was it really that difficult to ask a friend? "Liked guys?" Dean smiled when Harry nodded. "Well, I always knew, deep down. I always looked at men differently. When I saw the Quidditch team photos in the paper, I always looked at them longer than I did the women on the front page of Witch Weekly. Then Seamus and I became closer during the war. I think I realized I loved him. I also realized I never loved a woman the way I love him. Don't get me wrong, I loved Jenny, but it never felt right, I guess." Harry smiled at the way Dean looked when he talked about Seamus. How he wished for that kind of love. "Thanks, and just I'm just confused at the moment. Harry sighed, dragging his hands over his face. It's okay to be confused. I was for a while, but you'll find your way, single or not. Dean smiled. Harry smiled back before walking into the bathroom to change. He closed the door and groaned slightly. Maybe I do like Draco. Harry's face folded, and suddenly he had tears in his eyes. No, no, no. I hate him. He sobbed quietly before furiously wiping the tears away that fell. He sniffed and tried to look normal. Where's my drawing pad? That always calms me. He left his bed and walked out of the bathroom and to his school bag, digging through it. The crap that was in it. The boy soon realized it was not there. Harry began to slightly panic. Where is it? He muttered to himself. He checked his robes, his trousers, his trunk, every hoodie he owns, but no avail. He even looked under his bed, but only found a small spider that he screamed at. Shit, the boy said, quite loudly. Luckily, no one was in the room with him, so he could have a good look around the room. After half an hour of searching, he found nothing. Harry's anxiety rose rapidly at the thought of someone snooping in it or mocking his artwork. He took a few deep breaths, which calmed him, but only slightly. Harry decided to change into his pajamas, which was just a really large t-shirt and gray joggers, and go to bed, since it was already quite late. He stayed up reading some random book he stole off Hermione when he realized the other boys had joined him inside the room. He closed the book and placed it gently on the bedside table, placing his glasses on top, and quickly fell into a deep slumber. Draco sat peacefully on the floor near the fire in the common room, writing an essay for some dumb class. He sighed and set the quill in the ink pot before rubbing his eyes. After pulling his hands away, he turned to the gleaming fire and frowned. He felt so lonely at times. Even when he was surrounded by friends, he felt like he was screaming in a crowded room, but everyone in it was deaf. He was all alone for a lot of his childhood. As an only child in a pureblood family, he mainly had books to keep him occupied. His parents usually traveled to deal with their many businesses across Europe, and his parents weren't overly affectionate, but that they did love him. He looked around the room in which he sat. To him, it was no different to the Slytherin common room. This room was more comfy and warm, while the others were cold and dark. In the room, there was fluffy pillows, soft sofas, colorful tapestries and carpets, beautiful decor, and amazing fireplace. The Slytherin common room was dark and intimidating. In that room, there was leather sofas, which were incredibly uncomfortable, leather-bound books for every subject, hardwood flooring, and terrifying gargoyle statues. Even though the room would be dull and scary to any normal person, to Draco and many other Slytherins, it was home. It was a place where they could rant about their home lives, good or bad. Slytherins were always seen as awful and self-centered tossers, but in all truth they were misunderstood children who were taught to be grown-ups and treat the lower class as if they were vermin. The Slytherins were loyal to each other and anyone they grew close to because they understood each other, and they couldn't let other houses find out. Draco was sadly one of those misunderstood children. His father convinced him mudbloods were not equal to himself and others of his superiority, and he were to treat them accordingly. Draco had convinced himself that he was the type of person, arrogant, selfish, and pretentious, much like his father. He knew deep down who he was truthfully, and that he fit into the Slytherin accord perfectly. He was determined and ambitious, not to mention He was a great leader, especially when he was the captain of the Slytherin Quidditch team in 5th year. They finally won against Gryffindor. He smiled sadly and turned back to the fire. He had good memories, but unfortunately they were outweighed by the bad. Draco looked down to his essay on the carpeted floor. He sighed once more, folding it carefully. He carefully packed up the ink and quill and left it out on the fireplace. It was late and he was tired. He looked at the fireplace once more before putting it out with a small incantation. The common room plunged into darkness, so Draco muttered Lumos. He held out his wand and made way to his dorm room. Once he had arrived, the clock on the wall read 2:35 a.m. He realized how long he stayed up. Carefully he placed his essay on his desk and made his way to the queen-size bed. He sat down and rubbed his eyes as he sighed. He saw the small drawing book he had picked up yesterday. He turned it over and saw the initials, HJP, inscribed into its leather. So it must be Potter's. Draco smiled softly and put down the book before getting under the covers and falling into the darkness of sleep. Alright everyone, that is the end of today's episode. I really hope that you guys enjoyed. I am once again sorry for not letting you guys know sooner what was going on. I'm trying to post more often now. I'm doing a lot of pre-filming now, so that should help a little bit. But anyway, I hope that you guys have a good morning, good afternoon, or good night. Goodbye, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, whether it's recommendations or whether it's just saying hello. I respond to all of them, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, friends.